Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to World of Warships and our Saturday edition video as we look at the upgrade and commander build for the Tier 9 heavy cruiser, French cruiser, the Brest. So, I'm going to go over the ship with you, and let's dive right in. So, first off, we can talk about what kind of heavy cruiser are we talking about here. Is it a long-range kiting heavy cruiser? Is it a brawling cruiser? Or more this mid-range cruiser? And I would tell you that I believe the ship to be more of a mid-range cruiser, and she can brawl when needed. Sometimes. Just depends on what ships you're going up against, because you don't have that trump card of the torpedoes with the Brest. But she just really plays well in that mid-range. And when I say that, I'm thinking like the 12 to, let's say, 9 kilometer window. I mean, maybe you could even say 15. Just because the longer range out, your guns are going to get worse dispersion, and this ship has a really long reload, so a long reload for a heavy cruiser, I would say. With how Wargaming has designed this ship line. So it's important to your shots to count, I would say. And that, it's discussed in yesterday's video, that she's more of this pushing the flanks, moving up on flanks, utilizing islands, so on and so forth. Because also that relates to her armor scheme. So let's talk about the armor. So 25 millimeter on the bow and the stern. You can also see 25 millimeter on top of the deck on the bow and stern. And then we have a 30 millimeter deck in the mid section. So that helps with some HE spam. But of course you have the superstructure, which is going to eat up HE spam. And then we look along the side of the ship. We only have 27 millimeter on the top of the armor belt. Go a little lower. Then we run into that 190 and then 180 beneath the waterline. In terms of the turrets, we have 330 millimeter on the front, 250 on the sides, 335 on the back, 150 on the top, and then 310 down here. So technically it's going to either be the top of your guns or the side of the guns. A skilled player can know they can simply knock out your guns, like if they're in another cruiser or battleship, while you're maybe looking at a ship over here and they're moving up on your side. So they can knock your guns out if they aim for it intentionally. But then looking at the Citadel, actually let's put that back up. Kind of have a reminiscent of some turtleback armor scheme going on. So let's look at there's some spaced armor in here before we get, well, I'm sorry, I say that. It's the torpedo bulkhead Citadel armor before you get into the actual Citadel of the ship. We remove these things, and you can see that naturally the Citadel is going to extend beyond just your forward main battery turrets. Then, of course, it's just secondaries in the back, so they have some, it extends to the rearmost secondary gun here. And it's just barely above waterline. So this ship is definitely vulnerable when showing broadside. So when you're using speed, and let's say you're you're turning and you're turning right, and then so you're speeding along this way, then you're going to be raising the side of your ship, making it much easier for ships to Citadel you. So you do have to be mindful of that, but sometimes your speed just saves you because enemy ships firing on you don't always expect you to be moving so quickly here in the Brest. So let's talk about her modules first. So there's no upgrades to the main battery. You can see reload time with how we have it spec'd right now is 24.6 seconds. It would be longer if not taking the main battery modification 3. 34.5 second, 180 degree turn time. HE shell damage 4800. Maximum AP shell damage 9700. So I have found that the Brest feels better with the guns than the Cherbourg has in my playing time thus far. The hull, you have two hulls. You have Hull A, Hull B. Hull A has 50,100. So this is the first module you're going to want to upgrade to be able to get your health up to 55,300. So it's kind of like throwing on a survivability expert, almost, if you will. So this is important, I would say, to go for. You're on this ship, first and foremost. And you can also see that you get a little buff to your A defense and maneuverability as well. Then you have your gunfire control system. You go from a 16.6 kilometer range to an 18.2 kilometer range. There's going to be some times you're probably firing at ships at a longer range at that 18 kilometer window. But again, I think she plays best around 12 kilometers. I would even say 15 kilometers and underneath is when she performs best. And I'll keep talking about why I say 12 kilometers here in a minute. Propulsion, 31.5 knots, but if we mount the aeromic flag, which we don't have any, but we can still see the effect here, it jumps us up to 33.1 knots. And then you tie on your engine boost, which is a maximum speed of plus 20%. You are flying with this ship, pretty sure going over 40 knots, or at least close to. In terms of the upgrades, first and foremost, you have main armaments modification 1 is what I recommend mounting. This reduces the risk of your main battery becoming incapacitated by negative 20%, main battery survivability plus 50%, main battery repair time negative 20%. Because this ship revolves around the guns, and if you have one of these two guns knocked out, you instantly lose half of your firepower. So I recommend the main armaments modification 1. And then for the second slot, let's say you don't have any coal to spend. You could go for damage control system modification 1, risk of catching fire, negative 5%, risk of flooding, negative 3%. Alternatively, the engine room protection, risk of your engine becoming incapacitated, negative 20%, steering gears becoming incapacitated, negative 20%, and the repair time for the engine and steering gears is negative 20% as well. You could go between either of these, I think. And I think the damage control system a little bit as well, just because of the size of the ship, and that you get full duration fires on this ship. So if you can go ahead and reduce that chance, that's probably what I would run if I was only had credits to spend. If you have coal to spend, to me there's two options you can do here. You can see I am running the Hydroacoustic Search Modification 1. This increases the action time of your hydroacoustic search by plus 20%. So that is, for now, allowing us to have a 120-second consumable action time. So we have hydro for 2 minutes at this point. And that has been very valuable to me, especially pushing in dealing with destroyers. You can often dislodge destroyers who are sitting in their smoke screen and pop your main battery reload booster, and you catch them off guard. So having that extra extended duration of hydro to me has been very beneficial. Or maybe you want to run the engine boost modification 1. Since this is a plus 20% maximum speed, consumable action time of 180 seconds, so you'd be getting over close to 210 seconds, I think, something like that. If you ran the engine boost modification 1, so you have that insanely good speed for a longer duration. So I guess it depends on your playstyle here. I just kind of like having a little bit more of a defensive in the sense of having the longer hydro to deal with destroyers and torpedoes coming my way. And then for the third slot, you can see I've taken the aiming systems modification 1. This improves your maximum horizontal dispersion and your maximum vertical dispersion. So it means it's decreasing it, making the horizontal and the vertical dispersion tighter. So that's kind of nice because these guns, sometimes you're shooting, you're like, wow, where was that turret aiming, or where was that gun aiming, and a shell going really far wide. So having this to me is very helpful. It also gives you a slight buff on your secondary firing range by plus 5%, maximum secondary battery shell dispersion, negative 5%. So if you're curious to know what the range is, it's 8.3 kilometers, which honestly is not bad, and we can extend that a little bit with our combat signals. Alternatively, I would say the main battery modification 2 to improve your main battery traverse speed. Because you're a bow-in ship, it's not, sorry, I'm going to show this. The 34.5 second 180 degree turn time has not bothered me because both guns are in front of the ship, and I'm always looking at my targets. If there's a ship I'm going to be doing a dry side on, as example, I just make a little mental note that I need to start turning turrets a little bit sooner in advance than maybe without something like the main battery modification 2. But I value the dispersion, and I feel like that has done well for me so far. So I'd recommend this first and foremost, then main battery modification 2, as I know some players just do not like turrets that take more than 30 seconds to turn, especially on cruisers. For the fourth slot, I would recommend taking the propulsion modification 1. Time taken to reach full engine power when accelerating, negative 50%. when you have this prop mod, and then you also have the engine boost activated, you are rather trolly on targets. I had a match on north, and I was on one of the flanks, and I kept rocking in behind the island, and I was being a pain for an enemy Alaska a battleship or two keep firing at me, but I could just, because of having engine boost and having prop mod, I avoided a lot of their shots, just rocking back and forth into cover to reload and come back forward, shoot immediately, or to be reversing. So this works really well, in my opinion. Otherwise, if you take the damage control system modification too, you're just lessening the damage you're taking because you have full duration fires. So your fire extinguishing time, -15%, flooding recovery time, -15%. So this would be what I would recommend going for secondly here in the Brest if you're not a prop mod guy, just because you do take damage and you have to be mindful of your engagements since you do get those full duration fires on the ship. For the fifth slot, I'd recommend taking the Concealment System Modification 1. Ship's detectability range, -10%. Squadron detectability range, -10%. Dispersion of shells fired by enemies attacking your ship, +5%. When you look at the concealment, you can see with the commander, I have 11.9 kilometer by sea, 8.5 by depths, 8.5 to 0, and then 8.5 by air. So this has worked really well, especially for another skill I have mounted on the ship, which we'll talk a little bit about. I really value having the concealment, and I believe that's having concealment build on the Brest is the best way to go, because you can't really do a lighthouse build with the Brest because of how long the reload time is on these guns. You want to do something more of like that in a light cruiser, or even something like the Condé or Moskva could even do it right. Henri. And then the sixth slot, I have mounted the main battery modification 3. This is helping me get my main battery reload time down to this -12%, which you see here is to 24.6 seconds. Otherwise, I think we're closer to like to 27 seconds stock. Something like that. Maybe it's slightly more. I just spouting a number off the top of my head. Because it's a heavy cruiser, yet it feels like a battleship. But it's a heavy cruiser that maneuvers really well, unlike a battleship. So I made mention of it yesterday on the stream, or the video actually I uploaded yesterday, that the ship kind of reminds me of Dunkirk. Like, Dunkirk is a battle cruiser at tier 6, or battleship, if you will, in the game. But yet she feels kind of like a cruiser in terms of her maneuverability and speed. So I've kind of been embracing more the playstyle of how I've done Dunkirk here with the Brest, and it's been very rewarding for me in having more of that playstyle. So you also have the gunfire control system modification 2. This extends your main battery firing range, but honestly, you start getting beyond these 18.2 kilometer range with these guns, and you're going to be not seeing good results with the guns because of the lack of the penetration at range, and the dispersion. You might get 2 of 8 shells land on target. Yeah, so that's going to knock that one on the head. Let's go ahead and talk about the depth charge airstrike. So maximum bomb damage is 4,200. Available flights 2. You just get 1 plane that drops off 2 bombs in the payload, and then they reload every 30 seconds. So it's not bad. I use this a lot when I'm trying to see where an enemy destroyer might be, and dropping the depth charges out in front of me. So that's very helpful when you see their AA, though you don't see the ship. So it's good to have. So good armament to have, especially when we're dealing with more submarines now. In terms of consumables, first and foremost, I have the damage control party. Action time of 5 seconds, reload time of 60 seconds. So since this is a 5-second action time, you really need to make sure that, if, let's say you're on fire and you're going to go behind an island, You might want to wait till you're fully behind the island because there's still some shells traveling your way before you pop the damage control party to extinguish the fire. Because it's really annoying when you pop it too early because it only lasts for 5 seconds and then you get lit on fire immediately after it goes down because you have those full duration fires on the ship. So you just have to be mindful and exercising good use of your damage control party. With the repair party, we have an HP per second 276, but if we mount the India Delta combat signal, we're up to plus 331 per second. So this is really good. Action time 28 seconds, reload time 80 seconds. So when you're using your repair party and damage control party, you with the ship, just because you playing for my playstyle of playing more of that mid range, I have to be wise in how I use both of these two consumables. So because with some range in the game, it can even become more taxing and more of a heavier burden on the damage control party. Here you have the option between engine boost and fighter. I run the engine boost. That's what I recommend because you have the maximum speed of the plus 20%. Because there's different levels of engine boost on ships in the game. So you might have a plus, I think that's 8%. Like Georgia, I think is plus 8%. And then you have, I think, 15%. I think it's between those two. But having the plus 20% is really nice. So I recommend you make most use of this because your fighters are not always they're never gonna prevent the first strike an enemy CV will do to you. And yeah, and then but with engine boost, sometimes I can even avoid torpedo drops, sometimes rocket strikes because the ship's so fast and maneuverable, to an extent maneuverable. When you have the engine boost activated, because oftentimes you can kind of drift out of the torpedoes when you start turning, or just simply outrun the torpedoes because you move so fast. And then for the next options you have the acoustic search, detection of torpedoes 3.5 kilometers, detection of ships 5 kilometers with an action time of 120 seconds. So we can actually buff that a little bit here with the Sierra Bravo combat signal. So now we're up to 132 seconds of hydro time. So I do recommend running the Sierra Bravo combat signal here along with the hydro acoustic search. And then you have defensive AA fire consumables. So our AA rating is 77, which is okay. The AA I find does okay against tier 8s, but it's definitely lacking against tier 10 CVs and super CVs. So there, in my opinion, your hydroacoustic search, you're always going to get use out of that because you might not always have an enemy carrier or a hybrid ship with planes to deal with. So I just always find best use of the hydroacoustic search. Then you have your main battery reload booster. Your main battery reload time, negative 50% with an action time of 15 seconds, which means if you fire a salvo, use this, you're going to have another salvo in like 12 seconds. And then your next reload will be a little bit quicker, maybe like 20 seconds or 19, and then it runs out. So you want to use these because we have 5. So we want to use these when possible and trying to space them throughout the game. Usually, if I catch an enemy cruiser broadside early on in the game, maybe I end up popping this. But I find myself using them most in the mid and the ending of the battle, when there's less ships and you as a cruiser can push in and have more of an effect against the enemy team. Combat signals I would run would probably be something like this. So then we're getting our secondaries buffed up to 8.8 kilometer range. We're going faster. We're 33.1 knots, but then we go even faster with the engine boost. Up to 40 knots roughly. All of our consumables are coming off cooldown quicker by negative 5%, and we have 5 consumables, so to me makes a lot of sense to use this. Sometimes we need to trade with an enemy ship, so that means ramming them. So the Hotel Yankee, it's a very inexpensive combat signal to run, and I run this regularly on most all of my ships in the game, including destroyers. And then your fire extinguishing time, negative 20% for when you are dealing with fires, is very helpful. And of course, the Juliet Charlie combat signal to completely eliminate the risk of your ship's magazine detonating. So I can actually take all these economic bonuses off because I'm done grinding the ship. I just picked up the Marseille last night. So in terms of the commander build, so we are running a, how do they phrase him? Yeah, seasoned commander. I want to make sure before I said that. Who has 2 enhanced skills. One, he has Grease the Gears, so we have an enhanced main battery traverse speed of plus 20% versus, I think, plus 15%. And then our Adrenaline Rush, instead of it being negative 0.20%, it's negative 0.25%. And then the A damage is plus 0.25% instead of plus 0.20%. So we're getting more use out of our AR. And so I found this to work really well on this line because of the longer reload time that these guns have. So this commander, Charles-Henri Honore, works really well. And I have to look. I think we picked him up from the armory. So we'll go ahead and switch over to the armory, and I'll find out if that's true in case you're wondering where to get this commander. Yeah, right here. So you can pick them up for 1,500 doubloons to be able to get those enhanced skills. So I would recommend doing that. I also have the other one, who I own right now, but I haven't mounted him on any ship. So there's 2 of them, and but he has slightly different enhanced skills than Charles-Henri Honore. Oh no, that's pronounced that last name wrong, but we're going to pretend that I pronounced it correctly. So, what would I recommend for you to do with your first 10 points? Because I'm trying to wonder if I would recommend going for Grease the Gears first, if I'd go for Last Stand first. This may be something that's just up to you and your own personal opinion and your play style. Because I already had this commander higher leveled when I started running him on this line of cruisers, so it wasn't that big of a deal. And I haven't found myself having my engine knocked out yet, or steering gears incapacitated in my time of grinding the ship to get to the tier 10. So that's what we're going to do. I recommend Grease the Gears first as your 1-point skill to have a quick faster main battery traverse speed. And then for a 3rd-point commander skill, I'd recommend running Priority Target. This just gives you a lot of information since you're going to be playing more that mid-range. You're dealing with destroyers who are flashing you with torpedoes like they're switching between guns, so it shows 1 locked on, and then detected, but no one's targeting you. So it means he's probably switching back and forth between torpedoes. So that gives you a lot of valuable information. And then also just because you have a vulnerable broadside, and this helps tell you when you've overextended yourself, and if you need to take cover because some ship maybe across the map is targeting you, and you're like, there's no ships in front of me that are looking at me, what's going on? So it provides a lot of information. Then for a 6-point commander skill, I'd recommend, so this would be a 3-pointer skill, 6-point commander. I'd recommend going and take the Adrenaline Rush just to help get that gun reload time down. It's just such a pain if you're constantly waiting for that stock reload time, or if I'm still waiting for 24.6 seconds, but having that enhanced Adrenaline Rush, I find helps make the ship more enjoyable to play, because when I start losing hit points, that's when your main battery guns are going to start reloading faster, so then I can be getting down to 24, 23 and a half, 23 seconds, which is really helpful. Then for a 10-point commander, then I'd recommend taking Detectability Range by Sea, so that gets you to your full concealment build as we have now, 11.9 by sea, 8.5 by air. Just because with your speed and your full conceal, you can be really rushing up on the flank really fast, and then enemy team not having much time to react to you, especially destroyers when you catch them off guard, which I find myself doing a little bit regularly in this ship, maybe more regularly than I should. So that's a 10-point build, and then probably for 11-point build, just go pick up Last Stand. It may be that I end up running without this skill at some point if I find that I'm not having issues. But so far, I haven't had any really issues with my engine and steering gears becoming incapacitated. So I just really wanted to have it this skill because it keeps your ship partially able to sustain speed and maneuverability with the engine or the steering gears incapacitated. And in a cruiser, I really value that because I'd hate to just be caught off guard with my damage control party down, drifting broadside to an enemy Satsuma, right? Bit of a brown pants moment. So 11 points, and then probably what I'm going to say after 11 point with a 14 point commander, go ahead and pick up Superintendent to give you the additional consumables. So we get an additional heal, we get additional main battery reload booster, we get additional engine boost, and a hydroacoustic search. Otherwise, it's 3, 4, 3, 3. And now we have 4, 5, 4, 4. I've used all my heals before. I've gotten dreadnoughts in this ship. I've gone through all of my hydroacoustic searches before, and I've gone through all of my main battery reload boosters with having Superintendent. So because you have so many consumables on this ship, to me it just really makes sense to run the Superintendent skill. And then so going from a 14-point commander to an 18-point commander, I'd recommend Top Grade Gunner. So you have the permanent effect of our secondary battery reload time being negative 10%. So our reload time is 6 seconds, and we're firing at 8.8 kilometer range. And then the can be activated is increases main battery reload speed when an enemy ship is within your ship's standard detectability range, changes to ship detectability caused by firing main guns, fires on board, and other combat events are not taken into account. Main battery reload time, negative 8%. So now, when you activate this skill, as like you saw in yesterday's video, this skill was permanently activated after a few minutes into the battle for the rest of the match until the game was over. So now, just with that skill alone, our 24.6 second reload time turns into, I'm just guessing here, like roughly 23.5 seconds, something like that. We factor in adrenaline rush, then 23, 22 and a half, 22 seconds. So even in arms race, this ship can be firing the guns a lot faster. And then, that even shortens how many salvos you get off with the main battery reload consumable. So it's just really beneficial. I really recommend taking this because it makes the ship line more enjoyable. So you're not just waiting on your guns at that 22nd roughly stock gun reload time. And then that leaves us with 3 points left. So he's up to 20 points now. I could go ahead and actually finish off getting him to a 21 point commander. Because how much would that actually be? Yeah, let's go ahead and do it. I've been earning a lot more Elite Commander XP lately, and I'm getting more commanders with 21 points, so it's really helping out. So with my last 3 points, where would I recommend placing him? Oh shoot, I won't master his skill, because if I master his skill, now it's going to be more costly to retrain him for the tier 10. So for the last 3 points, there's 2 options, I would say. The first would be the heavy AP shell. So your main battery AP shell damage with a main battery caliber of 190 millimeters and above, and we're running 330s. So we can watch how the AP shell damage goes up to 10,185 versus it being the 9,700. So our AP shells are hitting harder. Alternatively, we can also buff our survivability to 59,350 with an additional 4,050 hit points. If you've been following along with me lately, I've been running this skill a little bit more on cruisers in the game, particularly looking at Des Moines. Des Moines, and then I also have him on Alaska. Halsey, who I have the skill mastered with. And I've been noticing that it's quite nice. I used to not be as much of a fan of Survivability Expert on cruisers. But then once you get to 59,350, we're running almost the hit point pool, health pool of a tier 8 battleship here in the game. So that's something to consider. So for myself, probably a little unsure of which way I want to go. The other thing we could do here is, let's say we're done with no, we're not getting any use out of a last stand. If we don't have last stand, that turns into us having a 4-point skill. So you could run something like Outnumbered. I don't know. I'm going to play with the ship line a little bit more, but I don't know how well this might end up working, just because this improves your main battery shell dispersion and also your ship speed. It could be that you want to have better AA, but I'm not really feeling these two so much, and neither the radio location, because for me, having the acoustic search and using your depth charge airstrikes, I don't think I'd get enough use out of this skill. But it could be that you run radio location because you're dealing with the destroyer, so that could be a very good another 4-point skill for you to have if you give up last stand. Otherwise, at this point in time, myself, I might consider going for survivability expert. I'm gonna have to see once I start playing with the Marseille, what I like. But I find myself often going between these two skills when I'm left at the end of the road with 3 remaining skill points. Yeah. So I think we're gonna hit that there. So I might just end up doing this. I think I'm just going to go for this. This is probably what I would run with a 21-point build. But there's some room for play. It really just depends on you as a player, what you feel works best for you, your play style. But I have found that the Brest is a ship that likes to play that 15 kilometers and beneath, especially with your activating the top grade gunner skill when we're 11.9 kilometers with the detectability range of another enemy ship. We don't have to be detected. They can even be behind an island to activate that skill, because you can just run up on flanks with your insane speed and these guns, and you're a terror because you're just running at enemy ships bow on, or maybe even slightly angled. But you just have to be mindful. If you get yourself overextended, you will suffer the consequences very quickly in the ship, because she's not the tankiest. She's a heavy cruiser. Kind of reminds me of a battle cruiser, but it's sort of a battleship, but not. So it's just a different emphasis that Wargaming has done with this ship line when they added it into the game. So if you liked today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you did not, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you're subscribed, thanks so much. I really appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.